Okay, now you can see here that the shadows are very hard shadows, so it's kind of, that's kind of typical what you would get on a very, very sunny day. But if you wanted to soften the shadows, what we need to do is increase the radius of the light. So this option over here, let's just make sure we've got the light selected. You'll see here you've got the radius setting. Now, not all of the lights have that setting. So if you're in like the quad light, it won't have that radius setting, but the spotlight does. So let's select it and let's increase it to, let's say 10. Let's just stop that a sec. In fact, let's increase it more than that. Let's say 300 then. And what you'll see is that we've now got this kind of ring around the light, and that shows you the actual size of the light there. But now if we now do another render over here, I'll just click on that little arrow thing. You'll see that everything's now really, really bright. It's really, really, obviously too bright in my scene. So the reason for that is that the way Arnold works is as your light gets bigger, it basically becomes more and more powerful. So a bigger light will be a more powerful light. That's realistic. That's the way the real world works, but it's kind of annoying because it means you've got to keep on adjusting your lights. So there is a nice setting in here which will stop that from happening. It's called normalize energy. So if I click on that, now what will happen is when I adjust the light size, it will basically, if I increase the light size, it will dim the light down so that the end result is basically the same. So you might find you do need to change your initial kind of intensity setting once you turn that on. But then once you've got it set up right, it will then, any adjustments you make to the radius should be, should be fine. So let's just have a look. I'm just going to click on this, and you'll see now it's, it is way too dark. So I'll click on escape, and I'm just going to have to adjust this intensity. So let's say change it. Let's add another 0 in, and let's try that. Still a bit too dim. There is actually another setting here. So if I click on this play button rather than the refresh, what that will do is it'll just keep on updating the whole time. That can be useful. Sometimes it can be annoying because it does slow things down. So if you want to stop it from updating the whole time, you've got to click on stop again. But for now, let's turn that on, and let's add in another 0 here. Bit too bright. I'll just change that 3 to a 0. Probably about right, actually, yeah. So that's good. So I'm going to click on the stop thing. And now if I change the radius here, it should, now because we've got the normalize thing turned on, it should basically keep the kind of the light intensity overall the same. So you'll see now I am getting, it's adjusting the shadow, into the kind of the sharpness of the shadow, but the overall intensity is staying the same. So that's good. Okay, so you'll notice it is, to see the shadows clearly, we probably want to see the render kind of fully done, and it does take a long time. So another thing that's actually quite useful, if I just press on escape now, is there is a render region. So let's click on escape again. It didn't work properly. But this button here, the little kind of square, is like render region. If I click on it, I can create a region by dragging out into the scene. And now if I click on the refresh button, it will only render that region, and obviously that will make it much, much quicker. So if you want to kind of like just check out your shadows, particular area, you can use this button here. If you want to turn it off, you just click on it again. Just be aware that once you've drawn it out, I haven't found a way to actually adjust the size of it once it's been drawn out. So you'll need to like click on that button and then re-click it again so that you can draw it again if you want to change the actual size of that render region. There we go. So let's say that I'm happy with those shadows. Let's turn that off. We can render out the whole scene again. Now, one thing you'll see obviously is that the background is black, and we may not want a black background for our scene. This is supposed to be the middle of the day, so what we're going to do is create a plane in our scene, basically, to pop it in the background. So let's go back to the Create panel, Objects, and a plane. Let's create one here, and I'm going to basically move it around and sort of position it so that it's behind the camera. Let's rotate it, something like this, and then let's go to local mode and drag it backwards so that it's a fair way in the distance. the way Arnold works is that if you have an object next to each other, then light will bounce off it, in a realistic way. However, for the sky, we may not want that. If you had it very up close, this may create a kind of bluish tinge on everything. So I'm going to move it further away just so that it doesn't do that. Because in this case, I don't want that. Let's set that to local and position it here, and then just scale it up a bit more. There we go. So that's now kind of filling up where the camera can see. By coincidence, mine just happens to be given the preview color of blue, which actually looks fine, but I want to change the color, so I'm going to give it a proper material. So I'll press M on the keyboard to bring up the material editor. Then I'm going to make a brand new material here. So let's double click on physical material. Here we go. That's my physical material here, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it sky plane matte. And then we need to remember to actually attach it to this object. So we right click and go assign to selection. So we can change the color here. Let's click into the base color and give it something kind of, it's the middle of the day. It's a very sunny day. So let's say something like this and click on OK. And now we'll do a render of that to see how that looks. Great, and you'll see that obviously we can't see anything. It doesn't look like anything, and the reason for that is that it's really, really far away. So none of the light from my spotlight is actually hitting it. So if I click on cancel, what we want to do to this material then, we could set up some lights on this, but that's going to be a bit fiddly. So what we can actually do in the material, there's a setting called emission here. And what that does is it actually basically ignores the lights. It just actually shines out light. It's like this thing itself is a light. So if we click on that and then pick a nice blue color for this, a bit too dark. Let's go for something like this. Let's try that out. And now do a render. Yeah, now you'll see the sky is very, very blue. You'll also notice it looks slightly different in the viewport, and that's because the viewport is still kind of looking at the base color a little bit. So what we want to do is we want to turn down this value for the base color to 0, and we can actually turn reflections right down as well, because we don't want any reflections on it. And then you should get a much closer kind of comparison between the sky and the actual sky here. Great, so I just left the renderer going for like a minute, and it finished actually doing a full kind of quality render. And that's looking okay. It still is a little bit dark over here. So what we're going to do, I think previously I said we set up a kind of a Skydome with the standard lights, or we used a fill light to fill in those dark areas. We've got something quite similar to a Skydome with the Arnold lights. So we're going to add one of those in basically to kind of brighten up all the shadows a bit. So let's move this out of the way. And let's go back to our create panel and lights, and create an Arnold light, and this time instead of a spotlight we're going to create a Skydome light. So we click on that, and now it doesn't matter where in the scene at all we position the Skydome, so let's just click here and let's select the Skydome and let's rename it here, Skydome light, lighty, okay, that's fine, and let's position it in here, and while we're here let's rename our sky as well. Let's call it sky plane. There we go. Okay, and let's now do another render with the Skydome light and see what difference it makes. So if I bring up the render window again, where did it go? Arnold render view. Here it is. Now, if you ever find that your Arnold render view disappears, which you may do sometimes, I found that I basically, when I minimized 3ds Max and then maximized it again, it seemed to pop back. So just be aware of that. Let's take a snapshot of this before we do the render. So we do a snapshot so we can compare the two. And now let's render with the Skydome. There we go. So I think we can see there's definitely a difference there with the Skydome. Let's just take a snapshot of that. Obviously it didn't finish quite rendering, but you can see it's making a difference there. Sometimes what's quite useful I find as well is if you turn off all the other lights in your scene, it's quite nice just to see like one light in isolation. So unfortunately hiding the light doesn't actually turn it off. So to turn it off, we need to come over, we need to select it, go over to the modify panel and turn where it says on. If you turn deselect the on thing, and then let's just see what the Skydome light by itself is actually doing. Here we go. So that's the effect of the Skydome. It's just kind of brightening everything up a little bit. If you have it up too high, it tends to make everything look a little bit too flat. So we don't really want that. The intensity of that is, let's just click on the Skydome light. And the intensity was set to 1. So maybe I'll turn it down a tiny bit. Let's turn it to, I don't know, let's set it to 0.7. And let's turn the key light back on because we kind of want to see them both together. And let's have a look at that and see what they look like together. Okay, so I'll take a snapshot of that and let's just compare the two. Quite a subtle difference there. You know what? I actually preferred it at 1, I think. So let's set it back to 1. And sorry, that's the wrong setting. And I'm on the wrong light here. Let's select the Skydome light. Set the intensity to 1. Okay, so I think I might have messed up the key light when I don't know if I typed in a value here. I'm not entirely sure what the exposure setting does. But if you've ever got a situation where you're not sure if a light's actually working, all you'll want to do is turn off all the other lights so that they're all off and make sure that the light you're testing is actually on, and then just render it by itself. And then you can see, oh, is it actually doing anything? So definitely my key light is way down from what it was. Maybe it's this exposure setting. I've tried changing. Let's set it to 2. I wouldn't, like I said, I don't know exactly what it does, but that seems to make a difference. So I don't know what the setting was before. Let's set it to 5 and try that. That's too bright. Let's set it to 3. There we go. That looks about right. And now we know that that light is definitely working, so we can then turn back the other lights back on.